My name's Barry Groh, incidentally. I always forget to say that. Will you say yes to affordable housing in this province? 1, 2, 3.
What is happening here in Little Mountain?
Little Mountain is a provincially owned land. It's a huge piece of land in a high-value neighborhood that's been increasing a huge amount in recent years. And unfortunately, the provincial government seems to have decided that the value of this land is its most important feature. It seems to have forgotten that the people who live here need homes, they need a community, they need their neighborhood. So they're flipping the land, they're going to sell it to a developer, it's going to turn into a whole lot of high-rises, and there's only going to be a one-to-one replacement of the housing that's here, and that's not good enough.
It's not good for density?
Density's not bad. I think it's completely reasonable to expect there to be density here, but it needs to respect the community of people who live here now. It needs to ensure that they're able to stay together as a community. These people rely on each other. They're each other's families. They watch each other's kids, and simply doing a one-to-one replacement of the social housing here is a farce. There's a huge amount of value here. If we put density here, we should at least double the amount of supported housing.
So if they said instead of 270-something units, we're going to have 600 units, would you go along with it?
That's a huge step in the right direction. I'd have to look at the whole plan, but that would be a huge step in the right direction.
Because that's a move towards private-public partnerships. Right? You think that is a way to develop the infrastructure of the city with private-public partnerships?
It depends on the model. I think it is the responsibility of the state to take care of people who can't take care of themselves. I absolutely believe that is a public responsibility. There are some models called inclusive zoning, for instance, where a developer could come in, build a building, and we can require them to build X percent of that building, 20% or 30% of that building as affordable housing. And the developer would then build it. It would be run by a nonprofit afterwards. That's one version of a partnership that could be beneficial.
Mm-hmm. But in this case, if the developers came and put 2,000 units, would that be kind of a private partnership also?
It depends on what they're doing. What is the public part of that?
Well,
if the developer is building social housing as part of that, and then the management of that social housing goes to a not-for-profit or to the city, then that kind of partnership might work. Yeah, it depends on whether they're building it, developing it, operating it. Those are all the different models of partnerships. The state needs to be responsible for housing those who can't house themselves. But if developers can help pay for that and then get out of the way and help let us run it,
why would they pay for it?
We can tell them they have to.
Oh, okay.
Developers are business people, and they will do things according to the rules. And if the rules say, we'll allow you to put a 20-story tower in this beautiful spot, and 4 of those stories are going to be subsidized housing, which we're going to take control of once you've built them.
Who is we are going to take control?
The government or a not-for-profit, like someone like the Portland Hotel Society or Atira or one of those organizations. So, and we're the ones who set the rules. The developers will follow the rules. We need to set rules that will provide housing for people.
First of all, every municipality in this province can borrow money at the best possible interest rate through the Municipal Finance Association. They get the best interest rate in Canada. If you hand the job over to the private sector, they bring in money 2 different ways. First of all, they borrow money. They pay more to borrow money than a municipality does. Secondly, they bring in money that they invest. The amount of money that you pay through municipal finance to borrow, to do your own work, it's around 5%. The blended rate that you're going to pay on money from a private partner, counting both the amount that they borrow and the amount that they bring as investment, is going to be over 12%. It's a huge financial cost. This is a great day for bankers and investors. It's not a very good day for municipalities.
And is the City Hall doing something about it? Like the City Hall has similar projects like this. This is a provincial one, but are there some municipal sites they're facing the same problem?
Well, the 12 sites that that are just been approved to be built on is finally, we're seeing a good example of that. These are 12 city-owned sites that the city donates for social housing. The province is now going to fund that housing and will fund the support necessary in those places. So that's 1,000 units across the city. And that's a huge step that we've needed for a long time. It's not enough. It's a very positive step. We can also start looking at some of the ideas that are being used up at university, at SFU, that are being used in Spain, where people buy their own suites, but they don't get the equity of reselling them. They buy them at below market, and then they sell them back into a housing organization at below market. And they get a little bit of value back, but they're not buying for investment. They're buying for a place to live. And then when it flips, it goes to somebody else who gets it below market value. And these limited equity schemes are, I think, one of the more exciting ways we should move forward. We're not doing that yet in Vancouver.
Isn't it like getting a little bit pregnant?
A little bit which?
A little pregnant.
We're a little overdue, aren't we?
The slippery slopes of capitalism.
I'm not opposed to capitalism as long as it takes care of everybody.
There's nothing wrong with making profits.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with making profits.
So you want more controls over it. You don't want the abolition of capitalist system.
I don't want the abolition. I want controls over a portion of it so that we can start getting people into housing. And it isn't just the very poor. It's people. It's people from all different income levels, because this is such an expensive city right now that almost nobody except the very rich and the very poor will live here in the future if we don't do something.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time.
I'm a member of Community Advocates for Little Mountain. We are a community organization made up of tenants and neighbors of Little Mountain housing. We formed in response to the unnecessary displacement of tenants that started here 1 year ago. Homelessness is not a natural disaster, but the direct result of ill-conceived, wrong-headed government actions. Let me name a few. The discontinuation of federal housing programs starting in 1993. The deinstitutionalization of people with mental illness without adequate resources and supports in the community. The grossly inadequate amounts of social assistance and minimum wage. The uncontrolled, highly speculative housing market resulting in ever-increasing rents and more evictions. The cure for homelessness is simple. The cure for homelessness is homes. We need the reinstatement of a comprehensive federal housing program. From the provincial government, we need a serious commitment to affordable housing and to livable incomes. We need to raise the rates. And we need a comprehensive plan between our provincial and municipal governments that ensures that zoning regulations and land are available to build social and affordable housing. The two main components of a comprehensive housing program are land and funding. Both the federal and the provincial governments are awash in billions of dollars of budget surpluses. We are in the midst of a period of unprecedented economic prosperity. There is no need to sell off public land to finance social housing. Homelessness can be solved. What is lacking is political will. Little Mountain is symbolic of much that is wrong with social housing in this province. First, this public land will be sold to a developer. Public land should be used. Public land should be used for public interest. We need public land for affordable housing. This entire site should be used for non-market housing. Second, the tenants will be displaced from this community. Little Mountain is a huge site, 15 acres. Phased construction can easily accommodate on-site relocation. There is no valid reason to destroy this community.
We are asking you to join us now. We are asking you to join us now. We are asking, we are asking. asking you to join us now.
Here at Little Mountain, there is an opportunity to build a model community of social and affordable non-market housing on a site with a history of exemplary community spirit. Little Mountain has been a very successful social housing complex, and expanded non-market and social housing at Little Mountain could be the pride of our country. Instead, our government is squandering this opportunity and selling off this public land that should be used for the public good to private interests. We want our governments to act in the interest of community, not developers. And Little Mountain is a good place to start. Thank you for being here today. With your help, we can save this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Kia. Not a bad start. And now we need to reach Victoria. That was just a warm-up. And let's see if we can ask Victoria, do we want the provincial government in this province to say yes to homes for all? 1, 2, 3. Yes!
In total, how many units would you say BC Housing is doing a year?
Well, since June of 2001, we have committed funding for about 3,400 units, so that's more than 1,000 units a year.
Do you have a waiting list for people that need housing?
Yes, BC Housing operates a housing registry. There are currently about 10,000 households on our wait list for housing across the province. So around about 1,000 units a year, maybe a bit more. But the other point to make is that government is not going to meet all of the housing needs of everyone in the province. It really requires.
Why not?
It really requires a strong role for the private market and government to focus its resources on those most in need. Government can't spend enough money to satisfy all of the need. So
because it doesn't have the money?
Part of the strategy has to be to work with the private sector. The private sector provides 95% of the housing in British Columbia. That market needs to continue to operate as efficiently as it can. And that's why there's a focus on taxation and deregulation so that the private sector can help meet more and most of the need in British Columbia.
David Chernowski, you're here at Little Mountain Housing. What is the protest all about?
Well, the protest is about two things, one specific and one general. The first specific thing is that this is a social housing project that's been here for 50 years, 224 units. The people have been pushed out of here. 170 units of social housing right where we are empty. There's thousands of people without anywhere to live, and there's 170 empty units of social housing. The contract between BC Housing and the city says in black and white that no construction will begin on this site until at least the spring of 2010. So we've got this crazy situation where we have empty places for people to live and thousands of people needing places to live. So that's the first thing. This community is being destroyed by the policies of the government. The second thing is we have between 10 and 15,000 homeless people in British Columbia and tens of thousands of others who are at risk of being homeless. It's 2008. This is unacceptable, and the people know it.
Okay, the government, they're going to say, but we're going to rebuild and we're going to give as many social housing units as there exist right now. So what's wrong with them modernizing these buildings?
There's nothing wrong with modernizing the buildings, and nobody here is against even increased density on this site. But if they're already going to modernize these buildings, there's absolutely no reason why there shouldn't be double or triple the number of social housing units here. No reason at all. We have thousands of people who have no place to live. The second thing is this construction could have been done in a phased way without moving people out. This is a very, very large site. We could have done the construction in one corner of it and begun by moving a few people out, and then when that's finished, move people back in, and we could have had a phased project. And in fact, there was at least one developer who was interested in doing a phased project.
Mr. Campbell is going to say, so what's wrong with private partners coming in and having some condos for the rest of people in Vancouver?
Well, let me say this. That Mr. Campbell is focusing on people who can afford condominiums for $1 million and $1.2 million and $1.4 million. The people here are focusing on the ordinary folks who live in Vancouver and across BC, the people who don't have homes, the people who are struggling for affordable housing. That's what this project should be about. It should be about the social housing, the affordable housing, and the co-op housing that ordinary people in British Columbia are desperate for. Mr. Campbell doesn't focus on that. These people here are focused on that.
Mm-hmm. How about diversification of poverty? Like if they get mixed in with the market, would that be a benefit for society?
Everybody knows that mixed communities are the most successful communities, but mixed community means social housing, affordable housing, co-op housing, and I'm not opposed to some market housing. That's not what the plan is for here. The plan is to build hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, up to 2,000 condominiums that will cost inevitably $1 million or $1.2 million or $1.4 million, and 224 units of social housing. That's not the needs of this community. The needs of this community are for increased numbers of social housing units and for affordable housing for ordinary folks in the city.
So if instead of 250 would be 700 social housing units or 1,000 social housing units and 1,000 free market, would you accept that?
Well, my view is that public land shouldn't be sold for speculation, for development. But the goal has to be dealing with the real needs of the real community. And the real needs of this real community, both this community here and Vancouver and BC, isn't for more $1 million condos. That's not what we need. What we need is affordable housing for people who are desperate for it, and social housing for the thousands of people who have nowhere to live.
All right. So what are you going to do at Parliament about this?
Well, I've just finished a tour of British Columbia speaking with homeless people across the province, 22 communities. I'll be reporting on that in the next few weeks. I'll be confronting Minister Coleman, the minister responsible for homelessness, in budget estimates this coming week. I'll be pushing for what people have told me across the province, which is we need affordable housing. We need the social housing and affordable housing that ordinary people in British Columbia are desperate for and don't have.
Is that a motion that you put in the House, or?
This week it'll be budget estimates, which is a debate, a question and answer period. Later on I'll be making recommendations and bringing forward legislation.
And do you have an idea of what that legislation would sound like?
Well, we're working on it. It'll happen in the next few weeks.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
All right.
There was a vigorous federal housing program until the early 90s, and then it was stopped. And our voices need to go all the way to Ottawa. And in fact, they're getting close to Ottawa today because there are stands in other provinces because of all the fine work that you've done. And so let's speak to Ottawa. And what do we want to say to Ottawa? Do we want our federal government to say yes to homes for all? 1, 2, 3. Yes! I think it made it.